Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the pod.
Hi guys. It's going to be a very exciting and upbeat episode
Uh,
today.
the not so upbeat dietitians have arrived to the
Yeah.
scene.
If you are not in the know, Washington Post published a new article attacking dietitians, and we're going to talk about it today. But before we get into it, subscribe to the YouTube. We add fun things on there. You can see our beautiful faces. Come hang out. Also, if you want more of us, where we're definitely a lot more happy and upbeat, listen to our exclusive content on Spotify for a very low price of $2.99 a month. We release new episodes every week. I think we have like almost 50 at this point.
Yeah.
And we overshare and talk about things that don't matter. And sometimes that's all you need in life.
I sometimes wish that we started this podcast when we did, just like talking about like goofy little things. Or like if I was into books back then, like if we like had a book podcast.
Mm-hmm. I
So
like to
support
think
us so we can keep doing this.
I like to think maybe one day we can like branch out a little bit. Like maybe
Yeah.
do like a diet review once a month, a book review once a month. That'd be so cute, a little book club.
That'd be so cute. I feel like we need to build the audience first because otherwise people are
They'll
going
be
to have
very
no
confused.
idea what they're getting into. They're like, what is it this week?
Yeah,
Talking
like
about like ice
what's
cream flavors
happening?
or like books? What's going on?
Yeah. One day. So stick around
Stick
and
around for today, though. Emily and I are a little grumpy, if you couldn't tell by our tone. Like Emily mentioned at the top, there is a new article from the Washington Post. This one came out on April 4th. They did also post one back in September, which I can't believe it was that long ago. It feels like it was like
it
last
felt
month.
very recent.
Yeah. But back in September of 2023, there was one when there was the whole campaign you may have seen if you follow dietitians about like the safety of aspartame.
Yeah.
We won't be going over the quotes of that one today because it was a little while ago, but we are today going to share some specific quotes from the one that's very, very recent and let you know if we actually are promoting obesity and being paid by big food. Yeah.
Yeah, we just really start off strong. So the title of this article is As Obesity Rises, Big Food and Dietitians Push quote unquote anti-diet advice. The description states General Mills warns of quote food shaming, dietitian influencers promote junk food and discourage weight loss efforts.
Listen, everyone here knows I'm a big fan of like the quotes, whether it's air quotes, if you can see me, or like in my blog or any kind of writing, I always do quotes. They used it for the article in like so many weird places.
It
Food
was,
shaming, anti diet, disordered eating. These are all real things.
yeah, it was very confusing. I was like, what is happening here?
Like you could just like the bias was oozing out of it. Although I guess we're very biased too against this article,
We
but
are we are too, but there are people that have reacted to this that are not dietitians and support what we have to say.
that's true. I've
That's a
gotten
spoiler.
some
So
comments from some people in my community and they've said
yeah.
how enraged they were.
Wishbone Kitchen, do you know her?
Uh-huh.
She's like on our side.
Oh.
And she like actually reposted some of Clara's TikToks about
Oh,
this.
I
So I
love
was
that.
like, we got a private chef on our side.
Heck yeah. Oh, I love that.
hmm But
Okay, should we get into the
yeah,
quotes?
let's we have a lot of quotes that we're going to discuss and react to. And I think at the time this article is free, but sometimes there are weird paywalls. So how the article starts is it talks about this woman who we'll just quote it. I don't know how to say this last name,
Roshan.
Roshan. Sorry, Jay. Jay struggled to lose weight for years, but she felt as if a burden had lifted when she discovered YouTube influencers advocating, quote, health at every size, urging her to stop dieting and start listening to her, quote, mental hunger. There's no
Ugh.
further discussion until really late in the article about what haze is,
Yeah.
which is like, it feels very, I don't want to say leading, but like very, like, what's the opposite of like an open question? No, word. Motivational interviewing. You know what I'm talking about? Where like you say things that are definitely
They're trying to like guide us to think something as the reader.
yes.
Yes, I can't think of the word either, but I know what you're talking about now. Yes.
We have a Haze episode. Listen to it. We're gonna be plugging
Very
a lot of
recent.
episodes. But it just starts off with this and then doesn't like talk at all about what haze or mental hunger are at all. It goes right into what happened after.
Exactly. And like shames her weight gain.
Yeah.
Because spoiler, that is what happens. Jay talks about how they gain weight as a result of ditching the diets, listening to their mental hunger. And so the reader can assume that anyone who stops dieting is going to become quote unquote obese and unhealthy.
Yeah.
Because they don't
And
describe it.
no, there's no description. And it's a very much like, oh, they stopped caring about what they were eating and then they lost all this weight or they gained all this weight back and now they weigh even more. And we've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast about like the misinformation around like the intuitive eating / like anti-diet approach. It's not just eat whatever you want. And this isn't on Jay. I don't know if Jay was working with a dietitian or any healthcare professional during this time, but that's a very common misconception is we're telling everyone just eat whatever the heck you want. Who cares about your health?
Exactly. Yeah, nothing against Jay because we don't exactly know what the situation was. It does say that they discovered this like health at every size approach by watching YouTube influencers. So
I want
I
to
do
know
wonder
who.
if she was self-taught. I know, I wonder too. I wonder if
I'm like,
maybe Tud was one of those. Maybe we're to blame.
probably.
Interesting. So yeah, there's a few different quotes we'll address throughout our time today talking about like haze, anti-diet,
Mhm.
like how the article sort of misconstrues that. Our next quote though, to kind of jump into a different ship. It's definitely not a phrase, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Jump ship.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, that's how this article kind of felt. They were
That's
like, we were
true.
getting thrown around. Like Jay would
Whiplash.
randomly come up like every couple paragraphs, and then we'd like get a random quote.
They would
So
like just say like her last name. I'm like, who is this person? I have to like scroll back, be like, oh yeah, it's Jay, the person who struggled with us. Okay, got it.
yeah.
We're gonna
Anywho,
talk about the authors too at the end here. And
yes.
maybe an issue we have right off the bat is their writing is hard to follow. But anyway, our next quote talks more about like us as dietitians. So one of the quotes that we're talking about here is quote, online dietitians, many of them backed by food makers, also are building lucrative followings by co-opting anti-diet messages.
The word lucrative cracked me up. Like, why are you so dramatic?
Billions and billions of followers. As if there aren't like health influencers that are building lucrative followings doing the opposite of this.
I was thinking this the entire time. I'm like, where are we calling out the people with like literally no nutrition education?
Yes. And they act like when they say backed by food makers, they act like every single thing we post is being paid thousands of dollars to talk about. Whoa, swallow your food and tell me what you're thinking because I am interested.
Oh God, you're gonna make me choke on my spit by laughing.
Not again. We already choked in the fiber episode.
I literally was debating my mom on this. Not really debating. She just touched a sensitive point and then it set me off. But we're gonna talk about this later. But like backed by the food makers, so many of these dietitians, us included, like you would think every single post we're making is sponsored. It is not. Like even the like really big dietitians who have hundreds of thousands or like millions of followers,
Millions. Yeah.
like maybe once every like 15, 20, that's like me being pretty generous,
Yeah.
like is an ad or a paid sponsor. Like they post other things all the time. That's like what you have to do with social media. You have to post frequently to keep up or else people get bored of you.
And we don't have enough brand work to post a new brand post every single day of the week. That'd be
That's
crazy.
crazy.
That'd be
But backed by
crazy.
food makers, trust me, we're not making enough to be.
Yeah, they say like big food is funding us. Like we're making so much money. Like, no, almost any dietitian you talk to, except for a key few, will tell you that we are vastly underpaid. Even those of us who are in private practice and like do work with brands. Like we're
Mhm.
not making just gobs and gobs of money here.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to the whole food maker thing, backed by food makers. I post, and you do too, like on your YouTube, like you post recipes, and it's not like every single thing that you're sharing in that video for your like soy sauce or your stir
My stir
fry
fries.
sauce has been like paid for by a brand. Like those are just products that you actually like to use and are
In
recommending.
yeah. I'm wondering who they were looking at. I know they weren't looking at a specific person because this doesn't exist. But like imagining someone's entire page just being ads.
Oh my god, they would not have a lucrative following. Like no
No,
one's gonna follow an
they
account
would
that
not
is
have a lucrative following.
exactly.
People don't want to follow people that just post ads.
Whenever I post an ad, it's my worst performing content, which is,
Yep.
I'm not mad about it. I'm expecting that. Like I don't interact with ads that I see on the
No.
internet. I scroll past those.
Because also like once you see that, you kind of like know, like, oh, like you're a little bit more hesitant. As a
Yeah,
consumer, we just know that in the world of social media and technology.
exactly. And so if like we only posted ads, no one would ever trust a word that we were saying. And that's why we have to like mix it in. And on the same point, is it really so bad for us to get paid for our expertise and work with brands that we trust and like actually encourage others to use if they want to?
And like no one's holding a gun to our head and being
You
like,
don't have to eat the damn Cheerios.
like like post this thing about Cheez-Its right now or else you're getting taken out. Like people are consenting to posting these ads. And
Yeah,
also dietitians, like I'm not speaking for all of them because there's whack ones in every single any profession you look at, there's going to
yeah.
be some weird bad eggs. But typically they believe in what they're posting and they're not like maybe if they're posting something crazy, maybe reevaluate who they are as a person.
Exactly. There are definitely sellouts, but not all of us are sellouts. We just want to be paid for our work and recommendations. If
Yeah.
we are going to recommend a product over and over and over again, it'd be nice if the brand recognized that and like helped us out a little bit. If it's one that we think is actually a quality product, which we have the professional education to determine if it actually is a good quality product because we're dietitians. One of the few
Yeah.
professions who actually has the expertise to make these recommendations about food
Yeah.
and supplements, which also didn't come up. Supplements. I mean, that'd be a whole other article, I'm sure, but like how
Yeah.
those are promoted willy nilly by people who have no education on the matter.
They don't want to talk about those people though. They just want to talk about dietitians.
Oh, especially, yeah, whatever his name is, the one author we'll
Yeah.
get to.
Let's talk about this next one. I feel like it kind of goes pretty well with what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
It's quote, most of the influencers who used anti-diet language were also paid to promote products from food, beverage, and supplement companies, the analysis found. So they said they analyzed like 1,500 social media posts. And it says like most of the influencers were being paid for every single post that used anti-diet language. I'm like, that's not possible because there's like hundreds. I know they said 1,500, whatever, but there's like hundreds and thousands and millions of posts adapting and supporting anti-diet language. And the large majority of them do not include ads because from like a wide variety, like you don't need an ad to use anti-diet language.
I use it every day and I
Yeah.
post an ad like once a month tops,
Yeah. Hey.
but I use that hashtag every single day.
Mhm.
Oh my God. And yeah, I know it's just like I'm talking about my experience, your experience, but we are among many others who are in the same boat. Like we're not posting ads with the hashtag anti-diet. And a lot of times too, not every food post that we do has to even do with anti-diet.
No.
Like trying to think of one I've done recently. I made a post about like how to make some rice with bone broth. And I wasn't talking about like eating disorder recovery in that post. It was just like, here's how you make some rice with some bone broth.
Exciting, convenient nutrition,
I
gentle
am promoting
nutrition.
obesity by saying that.
Yeah.
I probably am
Not
because
the rice
carbs.
with, oh yeah. No rice unless it's brown.
Yeah, get that extra gram of fiber in
But yeah,
there.
this quote, I was just like, this is, if you look at any person who dedicates a lot of their following or like aligns with the anti-diet space, you can just do a quick little scroll. It takes less than a minute. And you can see that the majority of the posts are not ads.
Exactly. And like you said, there are, of course, bad eggs, but this article did not specify that. It's like
Yeah.
all anti-diet dietitians, they're all bad eggs.
And also, I want to like point out it says mostly influencers who use anti-diet language. I've seen a lot of non-dietitians who claim to be like anti-diet coaches
Oh my gosh,
who
yes.
then like promote very harmful behaviors. So I don't even think they were maybe they're I don't know. I don't follow them. I don't know these people as well or what they do. But maybe they're promoting more with food, but it's
It's
very much
actually,
like targeted at dietitians.
oh, exactly. But it's really funny you mentioned that, the influencer thing, because just today I was on TikTok doing like just some like market research. I typed in intuitive eating into the search bar. Most of the top videos that showed up were how to lose weight with intuitive eating. So which is it? Is like the anti-diet approach promoting obesity, or is it being misconstrued by influencers to promote weight loss? I'm a bit confused.
It's whichever meets the agenda,
Exactly.
which we'll talk about when we talk about the authors a little bit more. This next part, I did the like deep dive.
Walk us through it. I'm so excited to hear your deep dive.
I felt like I was back at Purdue doing my little and analysis. And I was about
Uh-huh.
to say analyses. I'm like, that's not right. Of the main research study they were quoting. So their quote is nearly 500,000 Americans die at early.
Die
Is that
early each
right?
year. Not like they
Oh,
die at the beginning of the year, but they die early.
I was like, they die like January through June. What are they saying?
If you're obese, you only die of your fatness January through March.
First couple months.
Yeah.
Nearly 500,000 Americans die early each year as a result of excess body weight, according to estimates in a 2022 Lancet study. So we're going to underline, highlight, bold that word estimates, but we're going to talk about the study because I was having a grand time looking into this. So the study was specifically, I always mention the titles because I feel like anytime I see an article, they always only base the research studies off of the article, the titles. So the title of the study is Excess Mortality Associated with Elevated Body Weight in the USA by State and Demographic Subgroup, a modeling study. And at first I'm like, why are they using a study that's like analyzing state distribution of people being overweight and demographics? Like,
Yeah.
that's it was confusing to me. This article was published in April 2022. I will note it's an observational study, which is very important to note. There's no control groups, no experiment conducted. All the data is based off of a self-reported survey. All very important. One of the things I will note in the article, they quoted individual level mortality risks were modeled accounting for demographics, smoking history, and BMI adjusted for self-report bias. The demographics included were state where they lived, race, and sex. And then they looked at like if they have a history of smoking, and then they looked at their BMI, but then they adjusted it for self-reporting bias. I was a little confused how they were going to adjust they explained how they adjust it, but I didn't really understand how they
Huh.
were adjusting it. Interesting though. But they use a survey. And of course, I'm like blanking on the specific type of bias that can come from this, where you're like, I was like, performance bias, maybe, where you're
I can't
responding with what you think they want to hear. But there's
remember.
definitely a lot of room for bias when it's someone being self-reporting information, and that's all you are basing your information off of. the statistical analysis of essentially what was increasing mortality rate was looking at specifically BMI versus smoking history. It was like comparing the two, and then also looking at if they have a high BMI and a history of smoking. And specifically, they were looking at like excess mortality rates, excess deaths, loss of life expectancy by state, and the subgroups, essentially age and race. There were no mentions of dietary habits, no mentions of physical activity levels, no mentions of financial status, no mentions of accessibility to food, anything like that.
Hmm.
And where was it? Oh, they actually mentioned, there were two sentences from a limitation standpoint. They mentioned the words that they weren't able to take into account for the mortality risks were the differential healthcare access, quality of care, and systematic racism. I was like, okay.
We're
They
getting
like
somewhere.
acknowledged it. They acknowledged it for like two sentences and then went on to forget it.
And then still use the same title. Yeah. That it's your
But
body
I was
weight's
like,
problem.
they just threw that in there.
Covering the
But
bases.
the entire article uses lingo, and Hannah and I like emphasize this because we went to a research university. Purdue drilled in our brain how to use research articles. Like we can like literally rip anything apart because we were getting graded on it, and we were getting tested on how well we could like be critical of a research article. The entire article uses lingo like associated with and estimates, and this is because it's an observational study.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is they are taking data and kind of looking at it and making assumptions between changes that might not necessarily have any effect on each other. It's
Which they
very
kind of,
much,
they know that if they mentioned the healthcare access, quality of care, all
yep.
that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it's a very much brings up correlation versus causation. I was like screaming that in my head this entire article. And so that's something really important to know. It's an observational study. They're saying associated with estimates like nothing caused because it's observational. You can't know. There was no control group or anything. I will know something interesting to me is their limitations. This is always one of the first places I look when it's a study.
Or who's funding it.
or who's funding it. And they know they had small sample sizes for certain subgroups. They were unable to analyze income. They were unable to analyze physical activity and fitness levels. And everything was based off of short-term mortality rates.
So they're very self-aware.
Very self-aware. Normally, they're pretty self-aware in the limitations, but everyone who reports on the research ignores that section.
Exactly.
They're definitely referencing this research article for the title.
Mm-hmm.
And the like conclusion is like, their final conclusion is we estimate the excess weight has a large impact on mortality.
And this is why you can't just like read a title and use it to back up a claim unless you actually read the study and made sense of it.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot, how we can't automatically blame death, disease on body weight without discussing all of the other things that can impact that.
It's not black and white.
Exactly, which ties into our next quote, unless you have other thoughts on the study you want to talk about.
I'm good.
You're researched out. That was a great breakdown. I think that's important for everyone to know because, yeah, you see that study and you're like, oh, yeah, if you're fat, you're going to die early.
Yeah.
But even the researchers mentioned all the limitations, but you likely wouldn't know that unless you are reading that section of the article.
And also like the lingo used, like associated with and estimates, like because we are so used to being in a research like heavy world, we know how to like pick up on those differences. But if like you haven't like ever read a research article, you might not know.
And that's exactly. There's plenty of people who haven't had the same education as us, obviously.
Yeah.
Who don't go to school for science.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of weight and disease, we do have a whole episode, of course, we'll link below, but the next quote says, from a dietitian, okay, Kevin C. Klatt, a registered dietitian and research scientist and instructor at the University of California at Berkeley, says anti-diet advocates who deny the connection between excess body fat and chronic disease have, quote, made up stuff that is a fantasy and total fairy tale. Here's what I say about this. We are not denying that your weight and disease can have some connection. We just know the difference between correlation and causation, and that it's not as simple as just quote unquote excess body fat equals having all these diseases.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little thing known as nuance, and also all these different things that play a role on our health. That's not just our body size. So we're not just like up in la la land saying like eat whatever you want, weigh whatever you want. Any weight that you're at is your healthiest, or any weight that you're at is good for you. Like, we're just saying that it's not as simple as saying the opposite either. That if your weight is at a certain BMI, your health is at risk. We don't know that for sure.
And it's also like, it's not black and white. And it's not just nutrition and your weight.
Exactly.
Also, I'm looking at his LinkedIn.
Of course you are.
Of course. And I don't know if he's ever been a practicing dietitian. I think he just went straight into research. So he might be a little bit out of touch with reality, Kevin.
That explains a lot. It makes sense because we talked about in our obesity as a disease episode that the research is so weight focused. Like weight loss research is so heavily funded because of the obesity epidemic that there's just like so much science supporting, like looking into why all of us are getting fatter. And so
and
it makes
a lot
sense
of
that
like funding around it.
Exactly.
Like,
And so if this
sell.
guy's mostly a researcher, it makes sense that he hasn't actually worked with people in larger bodies and discussed all the different things that come along with that.
Yes.
Speaking of motivational interviewing, Kevin C. Klatt likely is not super duper up to par on that one.
You might need to review that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our next quote. It's just so fun.
I'm tired.
I went through an emotional day because of this article where it was like very much like, I feel like I went through like the stages of grief. It was like denial, anger,
yeah,
sadness. I don't know the order. And then I got to acceptance, and then I just got re-triggered.
I was
And
gonna
now
say,
I'm
I was
like,
finally feeling good earlier. I was like, who cares? Just an article. But now that we're like re-talking about it, I'm like mad again.
Yeah. I think we'll get to a place though. I'm manifesting this for the end of our episode where we just kind of accept that I have I'm not going to say it now because I was very proud of myself, my little comparison.
You have a profound statement to make. I'm excited.
I wouldn't say that, but that this is not surprising, essentially. That's where I kind of reached with my level of acceptance. But we'll talk about that later. You'll have to wait till the end for my very exciting thought. But the next quote, anyway. So they say the anti-diet approach essentially shifts accountability for the health. Why can't I say anything?
Because we're mad. This one pissed me off.
Okay. The anti-diet approach essentially shifts accountability for the health crisis away from the food industry for creating ultra-processed junk foods laden with food additives, sugars, and artificial sweeteners. No, it's shifting the blame away from the consumer and blaming it on diet culture. That's
exactly
like the big thing with the anti-diet approach. It's not. And sometimes the food industry does play into diet culture and like feeds into that. And that's a problem. But it's not about like the specific food.
We're not like putting on these like rose-colored glasses and saying like these ultra processed junk foods are so good for you. No one's saying that. We're saying you can eat them. It's not going to completely destroy your health to have a bowl of cereal. And in fact, also, those foods happen to be the most accessible a lot of times.
They serve a purpose. They're convenient, oftentimes cheaper. And I don't know if you've been living under a rock, Washington Post, but the economy is not doing well. And poverty, like, is a very big issue. Food accessibility, food insecurity, like food deserts. People can't just like go to their Whole Foods or their Erewhon. I don't know what the bougie stores are besides Whole Foods.
You're on
But
target.
and pick out their fresh apples every single day so that they have the most highest nutritious foods ever. That's not realistic
No.
in this economy.
Emily and I both work with patients who, like, the only food they are able to get is from like a food bank or something similar,
Yep.
where they have very little choice in what they're actually buying. And these quote ultra processed junk foods are going to be a lot cheaper and more accessible for them to actually get their hands on so they can feed themselves, which is so much better for your health than not eating anything at all, which is the alternative for some of these people.
Yeah.
The thing is, too, like, people know that eating a bowl of Captain Crunch is not as health promoting as eating, I don't know, a salad. Like, people know that. And that's a big issue with like these so-called health helpers of like, oh, we're just trying to help you eat healthier by telling you what you need to know. We're educating. That's not what's actually happening. People know that veggies are good for you, except for the, the carnivore crowd, whatever. What people don't know enough of is the risks of dieting and what happens if you actually intentionally like cut out these foods and you have a fear of these foods. That's what the anti-diet movement is about. It's not that we're promoting eating more of these. We're bringing awareness to the fact that you don't need to be scared of eating these. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? It's just like
Yes.
they're not saying quite the right thing. Ugh. This one made me so mad. I hated this one.
I like felt like I was having an aneurysm when I was
Typing it
reading
out.
this one.
So mad.
I was like, what is happening? What?
Ugh.
Let's
Okay.
move on.
The next
Because I
one's
feel
so
like the next one
similar.
also, this one made me honestly a little bit more peeved.
Me too. I have a quote or I have a statement I want to make about this one. I'm so mad. Okay, let me say it. Quote, I think it is really reprehensible for the food industry to prey on the vulnerabilities of people who suffer from diabetes or obesity or diseases that are caused by excessive sugar, fat, and perhaps other ingredients that do them harm. Blumenthal said, to tell people they should be proud of eating the wrong things, that's hardly doing them a service. Who are you, Blumenthal, to make this statement?
He's the senator of Connecticut. I literally was like, what are your credentials?
Why are they quoting this guy?
What?
What was that email sent to him that was like, we need a quote for you regarding obesity and processed foods and dietitians? What are your thoughts, Senator?
Those last part of that statement is really what like I was like,
Okay, these are my thoughts
you go first, you go first.
as someone who works in eating disorder recovery. We quite literally celebrate when a client is like eating a food that is quote unquote processed, bad for you, unhealthy. Not because I am like promoting them getting obese, but because I know that them having an eating disorder is worse for their health than them eating the sugar, the fat, the other harmful ingredients that Blumenthal is apparently so worried about. Like, yeah, he's right. We actually do want our people to be proud of eating these things because for so long they've literally been scared of eating them as a result of disordered eating or an eating disorder. And as we always say, mental health is health, and eating disorder is the number 2 killer in the mental health arena.
It's so crazy to me. It's like they're mad that we are not food shaming. And
Exactly.
they're upset that the stereotypes around dietitians are no longer like withholding themselves.
And the way
That
he
we
says,
aren't the
like,
food police.
exactly. Like, there's plenty of those out there. Let us do
Go
something
watch
different.
those. Go
Let us
follow
do
those.
something different. It doesn't matter if it's not the same as every other health influencer out there. Like, let us do what we know, what we were trained to do, which may not exactly line up with what you think that a health professional should be doing. Clearly, we're doing something very wrong if our health industry is the way it is. So forgive us for going against the grain a little bit and trying something new and seeing what happens. The way he said suffer from obesity, I hate that. Like your body is suffrage. It's a problem. It's so bad.
There were so many times they would just like throughout, not just him, but also throughout the article where they just like throw out chronic conditions and like slip obesity in there with them.
Yep.
And I'm like, so we need to have we mentioned this? We have an episode on BMI. Everything in this article is based off of BMI. Like literally everything from like the articles, the research articles, what they are referring to as excess body weight. There's no mentions of like any other physical health parameters. Like we could even look at like body fat percentage. That'd be crazy if we looked at that. It's never mentioned anything else. Like BMI is a very flawed tool. We talk about this all the time. Go listen to our article. We talk about it a lot more, but like essentially like it has been well known that BMI is not a good determinant of health or determinant really of anything, because the guy who founded it literally said, please don't use this as a diagnostic tool. Like, please don't.
Because I discovered this tool by assessing a bunch of white dudes, and that's literally it.
Yeah, he's like, might mess around, but like, please don't take it seriously. And here we are, hundreds
Now
of
he's
years
in his
later.
grave, and he's like, oh shit, they're using it for a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
In the name of health.
Yeah.
But that's literally the tool that we use to diagnose the disease of obesity. This tool that we know is not actually a good tool.
Yeah.
But we're going to call obesity a disease using that one singular criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. All right. Our next one's about intuitive eating specifically.
Yeah.
So the quote is, quote, intuitive eating urges followers to listen to their internal cues about hunger and is frequently used to help people with eating disorders.
This was all they said about it. There was like they didn't go in more in depth. Like intuitive eating has been around for decades at this point. I think like almost like 30 plus years.
It's older than us. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I think it was 95 was when it was founded.
Yeah. And this approach, like it's not perfect. There's a lot of nuance that it does not cover. There's a lot of room for improvement, but it's a lot better than the old approaches where it's just like policing people and shaming them and being mean. But the entire like it just like baffled me how intuitive eating, like they mention it, but like to explain what it is, it gets one sentence. That's to listen to your internal cues, and it helps people with eating disorders.
That's what we're always talking about, is how intuitive eating, again, it has its flaws. It's the way it's portrayed is not, there's not enough nuance to it. But like we're always talking about how it gets misunderstood on social media. This is why. They think it's just like hunger and fullness and eating disorders, when actually in reality, depending on the type of eating disorder and the severity of it, we're not even using intuitive eating for that.
Yeah.
Because it's not
like there's some cases you shouldn't. No.
Exactly.
But we'd have to be talking about nuance.
Yeah.
And we can't do that here, apparently.
And also how food shaming, if they're so concerned about eating disorders, the quote food shaming, I think, should also be addressed a little bit more in detail, and how that's probably what's causing the eating disorders in part.
Yeah.
Okay, up next, I got a little bit mama berry. They called out some of our friends, our dietitian friends specifically, we've had on the podcast.
Yeah. So if you've been a Tide Bud for a while, Kara Harbstreet has been on here. She's talked about athletes and intuitive eating. She's talked about MSG. We love her. She's great. Obviously, we're biased. Obviously, we are biased. We are going to link her episodes if you'd like to listen to them. But they included her video of her eating Cheerios and talking about how this was like a nostalgic food because she used to eat it while growing up. And then she talks about how I think like she mentioned vitamin D and maybe E. But she was talking about like nutritional benefits of cereal and why she eats it and how it's nostalgic. And they like, you would have thought she told you to go eat fentanyl or something.
Or that she said, eat this cereal or I'm going to kill your family. Like,
yeah.
She just said, I like cereal. You might like it too. And it's okay to eat it.
Yeah.
Fentanyl.
That, yeah.
That's funny.
They
Yeah.
also attacked Colleen.
Mm-hmm.
Colleen Christensen, also been on our podcast.
Forever
Also,
ago.
that was a long time ago. And they included like a video of her eating low calorie ice cream or talking about eating low calorie ice cream compared to eating like a full fat regular calorie ice cream.
Yeah.
And Colleen, they both do a lot of discussion around like food fear and like it's okay to eat food that maybe isn't quote unquote viewed as healthful.
I was a little confused about what they were saying about Colleen because I was getting the impression they were saying that she was being a hypocrite by saying it's okay to eat regular ice cream. And then in other videos saying it's okay to have like a premier protein or something. I think they were trying
I
to like
was
bash that we sometimes do eat diet foods or promote diet foods, but also promote the alternatives.
it
I don't
was
know.
it was odd. I was very confused as well.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, they're hating on the quote unquote more healthy option. She's
Yeah.
telling you to eat the bad option. But then they list all these brands she's worked with. And I'm like, what is
I was
this?
so confused.
I'm like, is this saying what? I feel like it was just trying to say like, oh, she supports all these bad brands.
It's kind of like what the vibe I was getting was like whenever I post that I prefer a diet soda, I get tons of questions asking why, which is fair because I'm a so-called anti-diet dietitian. Why don't I just drink regular soda? And I feel like it was that same concern with Colleen's content. They were like, why is she eating ice cream, but also eating these like diety foods too? That's what food freedom is. Like you can make the choice to eat any of them based on whatever makes you feel the best or we have access to or whatever. The next one cracked me up.
I,
Okay, so if you guys don't know, there is this giant conference held every year for dietitians, like the biggest get together for all of us. It's like in a different place in the United States every year. It's called FNCE, the Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo. And at the very top of this article, you see, assumably a dietitian, going down a slide at the Cheerios station at the expo, which Emily and I did too when we went in 2022, right? Yeah, which we'll include a picture on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. But the authors of this article seem to be upset about this event happening. And they said, quote, I can't even say it, it's so goofy. So goofy. Oh my gosh. Quote, dietitians noshed on vegetarian, quote, bulgogi samples from Beyond Meat and a pumpkin spice loaf made with sugar substitute Splenda. The horror. So this also gave me the vibe about Colleen, right? Like they're saying that we should only be eating, if we're going to be anti-diet dietitians, we should only be eating pizza, cereal, ice cream, not use things like Splenda or Beyond Meat because those are diet foods.
those go against what we believe in,
Exactly.
apparently.
Which is so confusing because if we're being paid by Big Sugar or whatever, why are we going to a conference that's sponsored by Beyond Meat and all these like diet foods?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Make it make sense. It
Word
doesn't.
noshed had me cackling.
I was like, what is happening? Also,
They
like,
typed in like eating synonym into Google to figure that out.
they're like, yes, this will get them us noshing around.
Oh my gosh.
Our last quote that we have is this one we aren't gonna go too much in depth. I was just like, at this point, I'm like, quote your sources.
Another one, thank you.
They said health experts say the most worrisome trend among anti-diet influencers is the alarming amount of misinformation they spread, including claims that excess weight isn't a health risk. One, list a health expert. List your source. Who are the health experts?
Yes,
Are they people who
because these are
sell?
journalists. Like
Yeah.
these aren't experts in nutrition who are writing this article. And even the people they quote aren't even, except for like the one dietitian who obviously has a hatred towards fat people, they rarely are listing health experts when talking about things like this.
No.
Oh my gosh. The most worrisome trend. What about the ones who are promoting disordered eating? Isn't that a little bit worrisome to you? Sasha and Caitlin and whoever else is the journalist on this article.
The people that are causing people to develop eating disorders and themselves. Are we allowed to say this on YouTube? Are we gonna?
I'll bleep it. Don't worry. I'll do the little like sound.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, future Hannah. The misinformation being spread, like granted, like it says anti-diet influencers. That's what makes me most mad because it's not just dietitians who are adapting this behavior. Like there are obviously people who are utilizing this and using it for their own personal gain. That's completely happening.
And to sell weight loss, which is the opposite of what they say that we do.
Yeah. But if we look at like the anti-diet approach to the core, it comes down to like not being afraid to eat certain things, and we're trying to encourage you not to restrict and hate your body and yourself and be stressed about food.
And like speaking of like when they say the risk of excess weight, how it's a health risk and we don't identify that or talk about that. What we talk about is how pursuing intentional weight loss to get rid of that risky excess weight, that's a risk in itself. And we also don't have a evidence-based, sustainable approach for intentional weight loss that we know is going to actually work in the long term. We're talking about it in so much more, we're so much more deep into the subject than what they could ever even consider in the Washington Post.
No.
Like they're just like at the baseline, like the scratching the surface saying that weight equals bad. But like what we're actually doing online, at least I know I have tunnel vision seeing mostly like good anti-diet dietitians, but what we're talking about is like much deeper than that. We're actually going below the surface level of weight equals bad. But they don't address that at all in this article. And then like you mentioned in the next point, like how correlation does not equal causation. We're also saying stuff like that. That was, of course, never once said in the article.
That was like the entire thing it was like giving off the energy of like, oh, look, all these chronic conditions are becoming more prevalent. And look, there's more prevalence in the anti-diet space. There has to be a correlation.
It's got to be their
Do
fault.
we not, like, there have been so many times in history where things were happening at the same time, and it didn't mean they were correlated.
Have you seen the example of like every summer people eat more ice cream and there's also an increased drowning at the same time every year there's an incidence of drowning and there's also people eating more ice cream. And so the crowd who says that weight equals unhealthy is the same crowd who would say that eating ice cream causes drowning.
It's
just
giving
two
that energy.
Separate things happening at the same time.
So
okay, let's talk about the authors.
There were 4 authors on this article. First one is Sasha Shavkin. They've written 5 articles attacking dietitians recently because you can look at what other articles they wrote. This guy really hates dietitians. He's a fan.
I bet he got broken up by one once or something.
Or he really like got in an argument with one or like commented something and they didn't respond. And he's like,
yeah,
that's it. But essentially, I don't think you guys care about their education. I don't know if I really do after looking into all this, but like he has like a master's in like investigative reporting and Latin American studies with a bachelor's. And I always still try to look into like things they spoke out in the past, and all he kind of talks about, which like honestly sounds more interesting to me than what he's talking about now, is he's reported on like environmental issues, political corruption in Latin America, the role of money and special interests in politics.
These are
his like main focus areas that he used to work on. I'm like, talk about these. These are way more interesting. And also like for what you have like a little bit more experience in like the political corruption in Latin America, where you have Latin American studies as a bachelor's of arts, like you may be a little bit more qualified to speak on that. And I know like reporters don't have to have background in everything they talk about, but like
Yeah.
then bring on people who are qualified, because we know that dietitians were reached out to about this article and they were not included in the article.
We can say who. They have a podcast out about it.
Oh,
So we
really?
had, yeah, they just posted a podcast about the same article that we have. We had What the Actual Fork on a while back. We'll link their episode below. But Sam, one of the co-hosts of the podcast, she made a video about being reached out to by the authors of this article. And they didn't even like use her information because, of course, it didn't align with
Their agenda.
their agenda. Yeah, their topics. Because she's a full-fledged Haze anti-diet dietitian, and they did not like that. What she had to say.
Our next one is Caitlin Gilbert. Caitlin is one of the reporters being tasked with posting on TikTok right now. I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
It's like new. It's like the past like 24 hours this has come out.
What?
They made a TikTok because of all the misinformation they're spreading about this article.
So they're trying to like backpedal or what?
No, they're trying to like double down.
Okay.
Highly recommend. Well, I highly recommend you watching it. I don't know if you guys like really care about it. Clara made, the reason I found it is because Clara made like direct. Clara did a very good job. Your dietitian BFF did a very good job of responding to this TikTok.
Ooh, like a Stitch kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
And then of course she got like attacked for like bullying.
of course.
But Caitlin is one of the ones that is now having to deal with the backlash on TikTok. But her background is in neurobiology and neuroscience, and her history in journalism has been past history. We're very much like in the health field. Her past history in the journalism area is in like the economy, politics, and abortion access. And I'm like, not really anything nutrition related.
What? And once again, like those topics maybe are worthwhile writing about too.
Yeah.
Maybe she does. I don't know. I didn't read her articles. Maybe she does talk about that more, but still.
But it was an interesting twist to come here. Our next reporter also has been tasked with making TikToks. Anjali Sui, maybe? I'm sorry if I'm saying your last name wrong. But their education is in English and journalism, and I couldn't really find much about what they used to write about besides just covering quote unquote global health.
I mean, it makes sense that these would all be journalists, like who are getting hired at the Washington Post to write
Right.
articles.
Yeah. But I was like looking into like what they used to talk about, and
Yeah.
only Sasha really has beef with us. But the last one might be the most important one.
Okay.
So Anahad O'Connor, background in psychology and neuroscience. He has 2 books. He's actually a best-selling author, if you didn't know. Best-selling author, where he has a book called The 10 Things You Need to Eat and another book called Lose It, the Personalized Weight Loss Resolution.
I wish we had time to read these and talk about how hypocritical these books are compared to what his article said.
Yeah. But there was no conflict of interest mentioned at all throughout the article, that someone has books that directly profit from what they are saying in the article.
Right. And like he can say, here's 10 things you need to eat as a psychologist or having a degree in psychology. But us anti-diet dietitians cannot say that maybe it's okay if you have some cereal once in a while. He's saying you have to eat this. And we're saying, if you want to have some cereal, have some cereal. But we're the problem. I'm back at anger. I'm backtracking in my grieving process.
Dang. Okay, well then I can't talk a lot about this next point because I didn't know you haven't seen the TikTok.
No. I gotta go watch these.
I'll give you the quick summary. I'll give you guys a quick summary of it because I'm sure more is going to come out of it. But they, like, last 24, 48 hours, they posted a TikTok about this article trying to like clear up misinformation. And the 2 things that I got out of it the most were they state that anti-diet dietitians are saying poor nutrition has nothing to do with chronic conditions. They literally like say that they're like trying to clarify that. And then they give no video or source of where this is coming from, that we are saying nutrition has nothing to do with your chronic conditions.
No anti-diet RD has ever said those words. We've never ever said that food has no role on health. Oh my God.
The other thing they explicitly say, which just blew my mind, was that they don't want to food shame anyone.
They don't believe in food shaming. They think it's not real, that we're promoting obesity. Oh my
But their
God.
entire article just reeks of it. And I'm like, I don't even think they know what it is. I don't think they know what food shaming is.
No,
But
no.
the comments were an interesting mix. There was a decent amount like saying like, you don't know what you're talking about, like, please stop. And then there were some that were just like, thanks for speaking on this. Like, not anything too exciting.
Yeah. Oh
But
my God. Okay. I know what I'll
it
be doing tonight.
it was definitely, you should definitely stitch it.
Yeah,
I don't have
definitely.
the level headness to stitch it, but you're much more level headed than I am.
I might have to wait a day. Maybe tomorrow I'll
I was,
be able to handle that.
yeah,
Ugh.
but that's the most recent update.
Oh, okay. Let's end on a positive note and talk
Yeah.
about how great cereal is. And we're
Yes.
not being paid to say this. No one's sponsoring this podcast episode. My God.
No.
I
We're
wish they
still
were, to be
making.
honest, because I like cereal.
I'd love to get made extra money for the same thing. I'd still say whether or not I was paid or not.
That part.
But first and foremost, cereal is relatively cheap and accessible. And we all know how the economy is doing right now.
Yeah.
So we
Cereal is
love an affordable
also,
choose.
yes, we do. Cereal is often a safe food for many people. And like I always say, eating cereal is better than eating nothing. I once made a whole video about that went viral, which is fortunate and unfortunate because the comments were atrocious. But like I literally was saying that I would rather a patient, client, whoever, eat a bowl of cereal for like, let's say lunch than to skip that meal. And you would have thought I was holding guns to heads. It's crazy.
Oh man. It is crazy how something like that, just like eating something is better than nothing. Like you think we're feeding you rat poison.
And like a lot of comments too were like, I'm promoting obesity by saying that. And they're like saying, oh, why wouldn't you just take the time to make like, a well-balanced lunch? I'm like, you clearly are living a very nice privileged life and or not reading between the lines here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every single day eat a bowl of cereal at lunch, unless it's all you have access to, then by all means, like I want you to eat that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm a broken record. I'm tired of saying the same things over and over and over again. And still we get articles like this on a every 6-month basis.
Yeah. Next thing to note is a lot of cereals are fortified with vitamins and minerals,
I'm
which
trying to
is
stay
like really
positive.
great.
Yes.
Yeah, which is like really great in case like this is all you can afford. Thanks to food science, they've been able to add in some extra vitamins and minerals for you if you aren't able to get it elsewhere and can't afford it.
They're usually a good source of like a lot of B vitamins, iron, which is a very common nutrient people are deficient in. And depending on the cereal, you can get some fiber from that too. There's also just like naturally occurring nutrients that are even fortified if you're someone who is like anti-fortification for whatever reason. Some cereal will just like have naturally occurring nutrients in there too. Which goes to our next point. It also has carbs. And then if you're adding, like, let's say some cow's milk to it, you're also getting protein and possibly some fat as well. So you're getting all 3 macronutrients. It's a pretty balanced meal or snack, if you ask me. If you can add a banana and some nuts to it, maybe to like even more beef it up a little bit, cool. But like it's why are we choosing cereal to be the food that we're hating on? Like there's so many other foods that don't even have the nutrients that cereal has. I
Yeah,
don't get why we're choosing cereal to be the boogeyman here, but whatever.
it's
It gets a lot
fine.
of hate.
It does. And the last thing is just convenience and how quickly you can make it.
Yeah,
Because time is a resource not everyone has. Not everyone is
exactly.
privileged to have. We need to
Uh,
have a discussion with everyone checking their privilege. That just like really makes me mad.
I'm honestly thankful for my clinical experience because I've worked with people who actually like go through these things. And
Mhm.
so it's really helped make me a better dietitian, honestly.
I feel like I've worked with the polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
So that has made me a little bit jaded.
Yeah.
I don't want to like forgive these people and say like, oh, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what the poor people are dealing with. Like if
Open your
you
eyes a
like
little bit
go
wider.
outside and talk to someone and interact with other people, you'll get outside your privilege bubble quite quickly.
Yeah. Like we both admitted to our privileges before on here. Like we didn't know we had it until we learned better. Like now we know better because we opened our eyes a little bit, got our hands a little dirty, and we're not perfect, but now we like are able to acknowledge those things versus using them against people and making them feel bad.
Let's wrap it up because I'm
Ooh, is this gonna be where your profound
I
statement comes
forgot
in?
about it. Oh my gosh, I'll end on that. I'll end on
Okay.
that. Okay, but remind me because I completely forgot about it until you said it.
Okay,
Remind me
okay.
at the end of this.
Well, final thoughts. This article, we always joke about like as dietitians, how we're always shamed for being paid by big food promoting obesity. This episode or this article was just like the epitome of that. It's like all of it coming together in one succinct little article.
Throughout the entire article, I wanted to note that like there's no mention of the eating disorder crisis. There was no mention of food insecurity, the housing crisis, where people go to school, trauma, access to high quality healthcare. There's no mention essentially really of mental health or social determinants of health at all. Like you can't go on a little rant about health and completely ignore these.
And weight too. Like you can't talk about someone's weight being a problem without mentioning all the reasons why their weight could be what it is, aside from even genetics and
Mm-hmm.
food. Like all of the things you just mentioned can also contribute to a person's body size, also. But instead, they just say the body size is what's causing the health problems, not any of these things that maybe are causing a certain body size, but also causing health problems.
Yeah.
It's like you're missing that piece, that link that connects it all together.
And overall, anti-dietitians are not anti-health. We're emphasizing that like Hannah just said, nutrition is not the only determinant of health. Weight is not the only determinant of health. There's so much more to it. And also, I was a little peeved. I don't know how you felt about this, that like food companies and dietitians were being put on the same level. I'm like, I have plenty of beef with
Yes.
food companies. Like, there are a
That's
lot
what
of
I've been
food
trying to
companies.
say. Yes.
Like, we are not like when you're in the food industry, you're going to interact with each other. Like, that's who are dietitians going to partner up with? Like,
They prefer no one in that we
Sears
don't make any
or
money. Sears.
like we're gonna partner up with food.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of companies that are adapting anti-diet lingo and abusing it.
Oh, for sure. We talk about
And
that all
that's
the time lately. Like this whole season, we've been talking about that, like how all these different diet companies and food companies, supplement companies are misconstruing what anti-diet actually is.
and that leads me to my final thought, because you actually brought me right into that, where I was like, Washington Post, you are on such a high horse about looking out for the general public and our health. And you're food shaming, and you are monetizing, like you're making money off of people's insecurities right now while trying to adapt these, like, oh, per the TikTok, we don't want to food shame anyone. You are no better than the diet companies that adapt anti-diet behavior, the wellness influencers that are incredibly toxic and adapt anti-diet behavior, and the food companies, because there's a lot of them that also adapt this. Like you are just contributing to the problem and you are no better than any of these other companies.
What a great way to end the episode.
I'm
It's so
over it.
true.
I think I'm reaching acceptance again
I'm not.
because
I'm still pissed.
I feel bad you have to edit this because
I know.
it's really gonna re-trigger it.
Oh, this one was
But
poorly edited because I zoomed through it just so you guys know. Just kidding. I wouldn't do that. I'll put in quality work, but
yeah,
I will be re-triggered and re-angried.
you're trying to say you're looking out for health, but you're not.
That's the
You're
funny thing about healthism. It's like you think you are making everyone healthier by saying things like this, but you're just part of the problem.
You're contributing to the problem too.
Yeah. Yeah. You are the foundation of what diet culture is and why we are working so hard to be against it. It's just like, I don't know. Forget it. I don't care anymore. Maybe I am paid by Big Cereal. Sue me.
The thing is, if we were paid by Big Cereal, we would not be having multiple jobs.
Right.
We would
That's
not
what
have
always
multiple
gets me.
income streams. We just have one and it just be our little job paid by Big Cereal, but it's not because we aren't paid by Big Cereal.
No. And if we are working with a cereal brand like Kara did, it's because she genuinely likes cereal.
And it doesn't, one post does not mean that they are like now
In cahoots
fun.
with cereal.
Yeah.
Like it was
It's
like a
literally
one-time thing,
one
possibly.
post.
Yeah. There's plenty of brands I've literally done like one piece of content for and never talked to again.
Yeah.
And I might still use that product, but I'm not being paid to still use it. I just like it, which is why I made the post in the first place and agreed to work with them. What's sad about this is I think most people listening to this already know and support us and all of this information. I hope this reaches the audience that it needs to reach. People who are in the comments of the Washington Post article and saying like, yeah, F dietitians. Hopefully this video gets to their For You page.
Yeah. That'd be great. F their 50K salaries. All right, we're gonna let you guys go because
We need to simmer down.
we need to go calm down. And we're gonna go talk about something fun in our bonus question, and it'll be much more happy over there. So definitely go listen on Spotify. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.